Hey folks, and welcome back to the channel. Forewarning, long form video. We're going to go over an explanation of situations that can occur when dyno tuning your bike. Specifically on bikes that have been parked for a long time in this case, or are built motors that obviously anytime you do a race purpose motor, you have inherent risks. So, I'm going to set you all down and we're going to have a chit chat. I'm sitting on the dyno. Alright, so this particular bike came in for a dyno tuning session because it was underperforming and had been parked for about 8 years. We put it on the dyno. Let's go over the information I was provided. I was provided with the information that it had a built motor, that it was a stock bore, stock stroke, head and cam package Gen 2. So that's 81 millimeter bore. High compression pistons, decent sized cams, supposedly huge cams, and a beautiful head. Fired the bike up, slight ticking noise from the top end, but not bad. Sounded like loose set valves. Like, you know, when you set your exhaust valves at 12 and your intakes at like 10. Just rattly kind of noisy. Not bad, no tick, 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 knock, knock, knock. Put the bike up on the dyno after checking the ECU out, pulling the throttle blade restrictions out of it that were still in it, and looked at the map and realized real quickly some funny business was going on. So the IAP table is your idle to like 2,000 RPM table. It is MAP, it is speed density, so it's MAP pressure over RPM. Then it blends into alpha N, which is TPS over RPM. I'm getting a little nerdy, so stick with me. Some of my folks, a lot of my folks on here will understand what I'm talking about. So what these bikes run on is what's considered hybrid alpha N. When I do the standalones, I do pure alpha N, but hybrid alpha N is what they run on stock. So in the IAP table, in the idle area, so between 1400 and 800 RPM at 20 inches of vacuum down to all the way down to like 60 inches of vacuum, which you'll never see, they had 53% extra fuel in it, which is absurd. Okay, I don't care how big a motor you got, unless you're running methanol, you don't need that much fuel. So that was red flag number one. Pulled that out, and the chunky idle that this thing had went away. So it was what's considered in the industry to be a ghost cam. They used the tune to make it sound like it had a big ass cam. Now don't get me wrong, it did have a cam. When I got on the dyno, started making some pulls. First pull was like 182, which it was really rich. Like 0.78 lambda, which is like 11 to 1. Really close to 11 to 1. Like 11.6. Really rich, with no timing in it. So I went ahead and leaned it up. It jumped straight up into the 190s really quick. We were at like 196, right? That's bottom of the bar of what I'd expect for drop-in pistons with a moderate head and cams. I'd expect somewhere in the 200 to 205 horsepower range out of head cams and drop-in pistons in a Gen 2. So went to make another pull after I put a little bit of timing to it and leaned it up just a little bit more. Now, I'm going to throw numbers out there that are going to be nerdy to a lot of you, but those who are going to nitpick this need to know these. The air fuel from 6,000 out to redline was 0.86 lambda, which is like 12.7 to 1. Okay, so it's still well and truly safe on gasoline, even for a high compression motor. The timing was at 33 degrees. Okay, that is not rowdy. I draw my line on the street on pump gas at 34 degrees on these, even high compression. So I hadn't pushed it out yet at all. And the rev limiter was still set at stock 11,250 RPM, I believe it is. I hadn't touched the rev limiter. It was still set right where it was stock because it was falling off at like 10,600, which seemed a little strange for cams, but I figured maybe they had a low lobe center because I didn't see any dip at 8,000. On throttle snap from that run, I heard a slight noise and then a very rapid disassembly of the engine. Okay, you heard brrr. That is the death growl. I know that growl. I knew exactly what it was the instant it happened. It dropped a valve. It ripped the head off of a titanium valve. So these are two-piece valves stock in a Gen 2. They are an Inconel stem with a titanium head that is friction welded. And once you put springs on them, which this motor had 65-pound APE springs in it, which is not beyond my threshold. Usually I don't get picky till I go to 70. However, with this and previous issues that have come up, even with engines that have been running for a very long time doing it, I will not install valve springs on a Gen 2 Hayabusa without doing valves. So plan it into your budget for an additional $550 charge for stainless valves. But anyway, it dropped a valve. Heard the death rattle, heard the growl, it was all over. Rolled it off the dyno, talked to the customer, and said, hey, let's see what happened. I'm pretty sure it's a valve. Pulled the air box, looked down the throttle body, it's definitely a valve. He called his buddy. He's able to get a head, a block, and pistons to match his combo. Sorry, I'm going to have to pause for a second. Sorry, I had to sneeze. He called his buddy and told him what the combo was and what he needed, and he had all the parts lined up. He was supposed to come down today at 10 a.m. So I pulled it apart after he left. I put their Gen 3 on the dyno, made a baseline pull, and rolled it off because he's going to be having me put Brock's super stock cams in it. Stock Gen 2 cams. Okay, I'm just going to put stock Gen 2 cams in it with adjustable cam sprockets and set them where I want them, and we're going to make good power. We're looking for 205-ish, 200 to 205-ish horsepower. Anyway, started pulling it down. I pulled the valve cover off, immediately recognized it did have cams, 483, 536, which is a 395, I believe 380 web cam grind. They're an older grind from Webb, which is notorious for nitride coating issues. It had, after I pulled the cams, wiped a cam out and eaten a bucket. Okay? Now, this could be a few things. I have not done any metallurgy on the cams, so I'm not going to bash the cams until I do metallurgy, which I'm planning to do, just to proof it. But Motorhead himself has already done metallurgy on those generation of cams, and they were known for having hit and miss nitriding, which has been solved. So go on Webb. The cams are great. Just don't go with the old ones. The other thing I'm going to attribute this to is the bike, when it first came in, was idling between 900 and 1,000 RPM, loping with a lot of fuel in it. That does not provide enough top-end oiling at that RPM to suffice for 395 lift. So it's a 0.395 lift. That's close enough to 400. 400 will do this even idled up on the street. This is why I don't do over 400 lift on the street. They do this. So that gained a bunch of lash. And here's some more pieces. Okay, we have half a retainer here. This shim sits inside of this retainer. Once it got enough slack in it, this shim came up and landed here. Now the valve's held open, and when it came around to top dead center, valve met piston, valve collapsed, broke the head, smacked, busted that, and all hell broke loose instantaneously, and the valve ended up stuffed in the head. The head's over there. Anyway, from there, went ahead and pulled it down. The head was ported, hand home ported without pulling the valves out. Call it a ghetto port. We got another name for that port job, but we're not going to share it on here. And it is not racist. It is not a racist joke. It is directed towards a particular individual's work. Anyway, went ahead, pulled the head off, and that's where I got the shock. So this thing, I don't know if you can see any part numbers on there. Anyway, the part number is JE part number 274087, which is an 84 millimeter piston. So this was a 1441 with a head and cams. Decent cams. This motor should have been making upwards of 220 horsepower plus on pump gas, at least in the two teens. So this problem existed prior. And I started chatting with him, and he said, yeah, occasionally on cold start in the morning, it would rattle like nobody's business and then go away. Or after a really hard ride, it would rattle and then go away. That's a sign that this is happening, folks. That is a dead giveaway that this is happening. So, what do we do in this situation? Typically, most shops, if you blow a bike up on the dyno, they're going to try and work with you to get it right. But you have signed a waiver or a verbal agreement in this state of Alabama, understanding that if it blows up, it's on you. They're going to push it to the limits you tell them to push it to. And if it blows up, it's on you unless it's something that's just negligence. This was clearly not negligence. But I offered him 66% off labor to do the top end on this motor. And my cost, which I'm not supposed to give, but I gave for the situation, because I'm considering it what it would be warranty, even though it isn't warranty, on a new piston from JE. He's going to send a block off to Rob Bush and get a block back, and his buddy gave him a head, and then he'll just need a head gasket. And his buddy has a connection at webcam, so they're going to get another 483 intake cam, because that intake cam is wiped. Completely wiped. And I will put this thing back together. But I was planning to do an in-frame. He decided to add head studs, so it became an out-of-frame. But now we're going to do a walk around and the shop update. So his motor is now sitting here on the lift. I have to clean up gasket surfaces, get ready for a block, clean up pistons, check the rings, all that good jazz, and get ready to slip a block onto this thing, and then I can go ahead and do the top end assembly. I'll degrease the motor, fire it on the run stand, and we'll go from there. Let's see. Achilles' bike. Chilling, waiting for him to decide on the next move. Ham's bike needs heat cycles, and then it can go on the dyno. Scotty hadn't been over to heat cycle it. I've been really fucking busy. That's the bike that blew up. Waiting on some oil parts, some oil feed line parts. We're going to put a check valve in the feed line, and I'm going to try and build a appropriate sump for the turbo, and if that doesn't solve it, I'm done with that. I'll tune it out and it can go. Chris Charles will be here tomorrow night late. He will be up here Saturday to pick up the bike, and I have a wedding on Saturday. It's just going to be a whole chaotic day. Jimmy's bike runs. I've completed wiring up, I'm going to call it 96% of the max ECU. I got about 5 connections to make and the main relays. And that bike is ready to tune out and go home. It did fire up on its own. It has a fuel leak I got to address and a few other things. Nothing major, nothing catastrophic. Bossman is always ready to go. That one now has a key. I got to see if it'll start. Those two are ready to go home. Colt Bateman's motor is in. Turbo is on. Fuel system is started. Yes, I have some freaking PJ Masks sheets because they're left over from Vinny, and they fit a twin mattress, and I have a twin mattress in here. Yes, I'm sleeping in the shop. I do have a house. Don't think I'm homeless. It's just gonna make it more convenient for the next couple days. So we went ahead, got the motor up in, started wiring everything up. Now we're down to fuel system and a whole lot of nitpicking. But Dennis has set a goal for the end of next week to have this on the dyno. We will see if he can cross that line. I'm going to be here to support him the whole way, and we'll see what we can do with it. And then the Colorado bike, Brett's bike. The motor is completely disassembled. We found a few things on that. I'm going to show you one that's impressive. But his engine is completely disassembled. Scotty's got to come and start cleaning this. Start cleaning each individual component. I got bearings and gaskets on the way, and I got to run over to Coleman next week, probably Monday, and get the rods. But I already know the machine tolerance is on the rods. They called me. Here it is. The rollerized thrust bearing that goes on this side was on this side. So he had completely melted down and friction welded the entire clutch push rod assembly. So fortunately, I have this in-house and this in-house. I do not have that. I'll have to order that. And I had the rollerized thrust bearing and the pressure plate, so we're good on that. Bearings are on the way for this because I did not have the right bearings anymore once we changed cases. And Derek Dumas's head is here. I'm going to shim that first thing in the morning if I don't do it late tonight. It is currently 11 o'clock, and God knows when I'm going to sleep. Brett's bike is out here, all shiny. So I went ahead and degreased and detailed this frame and everything on it. I'm going to be pulling the subframe off because he's going to change that up for a stock subframe and tail section. And then I'm going to start lacing the harness out and arranging and coordinating things to fit my jive of how I do things. We're also going to be trading those TPC cut forks for a set of stock Gen 2 forks. I had one lined up. I haven't heard anything back. So if anyone's interested, TPC cut forks trade straight across the board for a set of stock good condition Gen 2 forks with fresh seals. So if you don't have fresh seals, you're going to have to pay for fresh seals, and I'll put them in, and you can get these TPC cut forks in exchange. They're appearing to be almost 3-inch cut or 2.5-inch cut. They're good cut forks, but we'll be going back to a 120/60 front tire as well on this bike to try and make it a little more street friendly, and we will be shortening it up. He's looking for an arm. If he doesn't find one, I think we can slam all the way forward and get close to where I'd like to be, but I'd really love to be shorter than that. Alright, so we are at a 15-minute video. Damn, we got a long one today. Bear's bike will be up here Sunday. I'm going to go to his place, pick up the chassis, the pipe, all that stuff. And then I'm going to run down to Dennis's house and grab the motor and put it back in. That just got a refresh. It got new rod bearings, all that good jazz. It's been 3 years and it ain't been freshened up. It needed it. So then that'll be ready for me to rock and roll with it. And we're going to go to the track. So the goal is, not this weekend, but next weekend, to have Jimmy, the Busa, and the G-Ball at the track together and go have some fun. But we'll see what happens there, depending on parts for this, parts for that, parts for the other, on whether or not I can pull that off. But I've got to, because Jimmy already paid for trackside service, and that'll be the day. Jimmy will be here tomorrow. In any case, if you guys haven't heard, I do have some heart issues. Not so much heart issues, blood pressure issues. So bear with me. I go fast sometimes, slow others. It's going to be part of life from now on. But I do have a funeral to attend tomorrow, Friday. And then, well, today, Friday, actually. It's probably pretty close to midnight. And then a wedding on Saturday. So I will be in and out-ish of the shop. Y'all have a beautiful day.